Mr. Justin Wren.
Hey, brother.
Good to see you again.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, last time we spoke, you were sitting over there, and now I'm in your home.
Yes.
It's a very exciting way to connect the dots of temporal space. When was that? That was it a year?
Probably.
Yeah.
Actually, it was probably around November.
Okay.
November of last year, so not even a year yet.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think like where you were at. I'm remembering that and where you're at now. And you're back in training, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully going to fight first quarter of 2022. So I was talking about a fight in Japan, New Year's Eve, December 31st, but Amy's niece is getting married on New Year's Eve.
You changed your whole fight for a wedding?
Okay, so there's several factors. It's the wedding, which is a great way to say that, but also it's normally a fight in front of 100,000 people live. Normally.
Yeah, okay.
But with COVID, it's probably going to be an empty arena or very few people.
Crazy.
And so thinking about that, it's my childhood dream to fight at the Saitama Super Arena in Tokyo, Japan, New Year's Eve in front of 100,000 people. And that would be epic. But the Japanese crowd is already really quiet, and I love that about them.
It's like a tennis match, but it's like MMA.
Even more quiet than a tennis match. There's little golf claps and oohs and ahs if someone defends something. Yeah. But the crowd never really erupts until the finish of the fight.
Wow.
And so they're the most knowledgeable fan base, I think, in the world for mixed martial arts. They're not yelling ringside, 10 beers in and rip his head off.
Yeah.
It's like they actually know whenever someone is setting up a submission and when someone defends one and whenever someone they're studying it while they're watching it. And so the appreciation there, I've always wanted to fight there. And their fighters, especially heavyweight fighters, there's a lot of times like a comic book comes out for them before their fight or right after.
Do you have a comic book?
No, I don't. I've never fought in Japan. It's always been a dream since I was, I think, 15 years old. I wrote it down on my goals list as a kid. Number 1 was fight at the Saitama Super Arena. Number 2 was fight in the UFC. Number 3 was be a national champion wrestler. And I got to do 2 and 3, but I haven't done 1 yet. So
that's one of the main 3.
Yeah.
So you didn't do it because of a wedding?
That and I think that timing-wise for me, I'll be more prepared first quarter of the year because I've had this podcast release that I'm doing. And then I want a packed arena. Not just I want that.
You want the full dream.
Yeah. If I have to wait a year for it and I'm more prepared, I'd rather wait another year than go there and not be able to interact with the fans, not be able to bring a full camp or my coaches, friends, family, stuff like that. I'd rather it be open. So waiting a year doesn't.
So you're full, like for me, in some ways. Or like when you know you're going to do an ayahuasca journey or there's a big event coming up, it's sort of like that lit the fuse in that moment. It's in your mind from then on. Mm-hmm. Is it hard for you, even though now it might be a bit away, right, theoretically, but like, can you ever like feel like you can drop the momentum, or is it always in your back of your mind like, I don't know if I should have that third beer, or because like I'm on this path of training that's sort of all encompassing.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but the near look, far vision. I had a board member who's no longer on our board because he's had some medical conditions, but his name's Joel Swinehart. He's an incredible man. Has done a lot in his career, but he always talked about Fight for the Forgotten, getting the right board members that are almost like an armada. He would use these military kind of terminologies where he's like, you want your battleship and you want your, the one that the planes land on and can take off. You want your submarine. You want all these things. He always tell me like near look, far vision. He says, if you take a penny and you put it in front of your eye, that's the near look. Like you're focused on that. But you also got to have the far vision where you can like move that and see where you're headed. And so the near look for me was, I've got to fight this New Year's Eve in Japan. So Amy and I were talking about how we're going to make it work. She was like, well, the wedding's actually on the 1st. And so theoretically, with the timing, I could fight and just get on a plane and come back and potentially make it. But
From
if there's
Japan to here?
yeah, I think, right? Isn't that,
Which
aren't
was the
they ahead
time
of
go?
us? I think they're ahead of us.
They're ahead, I believe. Yeah, because the
so we're talking
lines
about how can we find a midnight flight or a red eye or
private.
something
You have
like
to go
that.
private, baby.
Yeah. So it just didn't seem like it was in the cards. So the far vision is, and this is what my coaches said too, which is, we know you as an athlete want to circle a date on the calendar and say, this is when I'm doing it. So you can put everything in your life around that. But with a podcast release, with me getting healthy again, with it being 2 years off since I fought because of shoulder surgery, things like that. They're like, why don't you just feel healthy? Why don't you get in the routine here in Austin, feel great at On-It gym with my strength and conditioning, which has never really been that big of a focus of mine.
Strength conditioning?
Yeah, strength, like weight training. It's normally been in kettlebells, and that's why I really like On-It, because it's more functional.
Mm-hmm. I worked out there once.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's a cool gym. Like you're saying, it's more movement-based, functional-based.
Yeah. And I used to have strength and conditioning coaches that would think, and these are guys at the highest level, that because I'm a fighter, they've got to beat me down in the gym so that I'll be ready and harder, tougher fight time. But looking at it now as I progressed in age and in experience, it's like, I don't want to break my body down before I get into a fight. I want to build it back up, especially in strength and conditioning. I'm going to break my body down in sparring. I'm going to break my body down in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, all of it. So whenever I go back into like On-It, yes, I want to push myself, but I also want to protect myself and build a great foundation. So the theory was from Rafael Lovato Jr., an undefeated MMA world champion, who also is like 12-time world medalist in jiu-jitsu. My coaches down here, they're like, just look good, feel good.
Look good? That's what they said? That's the first thing? Look good?
Yeah.
It's like, if you look the part, it'll work.
No, if they say that I'm looking good, then I know that I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
That it's all going to come together. And if I just feel that way for 2 or 3 months, then they'll say to me, or I'll say to them, like, hey, I'm ready. Let's do this. So that's why I've kind of pushed it back to, I'm still doing it, right? I'm saying first quarter of next year. But really, I just need to feel healthy, be fight ready.
So it's a little more like, you're saying, like looser in a sense. Yeah. You don't want it to be like every day, every moment. It's like, okay, this fight now is 1 day closer, 1 day closer, 1 hour closer. It's more just like, no, it's about a mindset of overall preparedness that has something to do with like letting life live life too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a real shift for me, and I hope it's a symbol of, or sign that I'm maturing, where I'm getting older. I'm 34 years old, but heavyweights normally step into their prime around 32 to 40, 42.
Really?
Yeah. The little guys, or the smaller weight classes, like 125, 135, 145. It's kind of like the NFL, the running backs, they normally don't have the longer careers. It's kind of the heavier guys that can like be older and more mature. So the little guy's speed goes faster, right? That starts to disappear quicker. Yeah. But at heavyweight, it's more about strength, experience. At lighter weights, it's about endurance, speed. And they're like Energizer bunnies.
Heavyweight's about wisdom.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
It actually kind of is, because our shots have more consequences. Probably 8 out of 10 fights at heavyweight are a finish, whether it's a knockout or a submission. And then I think that's the statistics that the lightweights, flyweights, those Energizer bunnies, they can hit each other in the head, elbow, knee, and kick. And a lot of times those guys can handle it for 3 rounds, 5 rounds, because it's a lower statistic of finish rates. 1, 2, 3 out of 10 fights get finished.
You, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're undefeated, right?
Not undefeated.
Was it
15-2?
15-2.
Yeah.
Actually, that actually helps my point. I was going to ask, actually. Is like, I feel like that's better. Because if someone defines anything as like undefeated, then that's like this super black and white thing that you have to like work against, as opposed to like, it's a little this, a little that. I mean, 15-2 is amazing.
Thanks.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I would be like -2 Yeah, or I would be like, I would be.
Negative is pretty
I
bad.
wouldn't make it in the ring.
Yeah.
I'd be the guy who's like, it's a negative if you didn't even make it into the fight. You
Yeah.
just bailed before you stepped in the ring.
You actually see that at the amateur level where it's
They see
really hard.
they see the person in the ring. They're like, you know
They
what?
don't show up.
I'm tapping.
My third fight. Now this was back in the day, kind of still in when the sport was being pioneered. Well, I mean, it started in '93, but I started fighting in 2006 professionally. I was 19 years old, and the third fight, I was in Iowa. I was at Iowa State University wrestling, and I was just attending. I had 2 pro fights, but I was in the crowd. I was in dress shoes, a button-down shirt. I was in the crowd, and one of the opponents didn't show up to fight.
Come on. And they're like, you want to do this?
Well, the promoter got in there.
It's a nightmare
apologize.
for me. Yeah. It's like someone's like, you.
No, they didn't point me out. I was 19 years old, and I was on my 3rd beer, just thinking I was attending and watching the fight.
That's even worse, because then you're like, I can do this.
Yeah. They didn't know I was on my 3rd beer. But I was there, and the opponent got in. The promoter apologized, said that his opponent showed up to weigh-ins, agreed to the fight 8 or 10 weeks earlier, had a full fight camp, showed up at weigh-ins, did the face-off. Night of the fight, he just no-showed.
Weird.
And so they're having a scramble because this is the co-main event. And they allowed him to apologize to his fans. And then the promoter whispered something to him. And my opponent that night said, you know what? They were going to give free tickets for the next show for any of his fans, like give him a credit. He goes, but if there's anyone in here that's over 205 pounds, that's a professional fighter that I came here to fight tonight. Let's give the fans what they want to see. They don't allow that anymore. But Iowa at the time didn't have an athletic commission that oversaw MMA. And my friend looked at me, and I finished my beer. And
that's pretty badass.
I stood up. I stood up and raised my hand. And so I went in there, and they asked, and I said, yeah, I'm a fighter, and I'm a heavyweight. Let's do this.
Did they give you some clothes, or you just...
That's the worst part of the story, to be honest, because it was my fastest fight I've ever had. I knocked him out in 14 seconds. Might have been 16. It was over or under 15 seconds by a second. And he was a wrestler. I was a wrestler, so I knew he was going to shoot. So I just had to throw an uppercut whenever he tried to shoot in, theoretically, and it worked. But I go backstage. I have to borrow a pair of fight shorts. I might have had shorts in my car or my truck, but I didn't have a mouthpiece and I didn't have a cup. So I had to get a boil and bite mouthpiece that we used like a coffee pot to try to mold it, but it wasn't hot enough. And so I got a little bit of a bite, and I knew that if I got a good punch, like my mouthpiece might fall out of my mouth. And then we had to wait for some other bigger guys on the undercard to get done, finish fighting. And I wore the light heavyweight fight. They fought 3 full rounds. They were dripping sweat. It was a decision. And I had to borrow one of those guys' cup and jockstrap to put over my boxers.
I would have retired.
Yeah. I guess I wanted the money. I needed the money, I think, for rent. So I used that sweaty jockstrap over my boxers. But still,
over your boxers.
It was disgusting.
Oh God!
Yeah, cups don't really work right, anyways. If you wear them over the boxers.
So was it one of the greatest moments of your life when you like knocked the guy out and you're just like
I think I just wanted out of that cup. I wanted out of that sweaty jock. But yeah, it was a cool moment because I had a bunch of friends there, and none of them knew how to fight, and I had 2 of them in my corner that night. And I was like, just give me water if it goes to the second round.
Amazing. It kind of speaks to the, like sometimes where preparation, when you know about things and then you get to prepare, which is great. But at the same time, what value there is when you can't do that. And it's just something's placed in front of you. You meet the moment, and how we're able to do that. You know, it's when there's no options to like get in your head about it or think about it or anything. It's just like you step in.
Yeah. You just set up, you just don't think about it, you just step in. That's what we're going to do in the ice bath after this, right?
Yeah, you have an ice bath,
I want you to get in that,
I'll tell you what we'll do.
Flow state.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do some podcasting, and then we'll do the ice bath, and we'll do at least 5 more minutes immediately after the ice bath
of podcasts.
Of podcasts.
Okay.
We'll hit record so
Yeah.
the audience can have a little bit of.
Maybe we record while we're in there.
Oh,
From
Christ.
the outside.
Yeah, we might not. We'll try.
Just breathe.
We might not use it.
Yeah,
We'll
I
get
think
some
when
audio.
you don't have the time to think about it, because this is what I was saying about amateur fighters. It's really hard for someone to build their amateur record. I think it's easier nowadays, but there'd be people that think they want to be a fighter or think they want to fight, and they might be training. I know a guy that was one of the best in the world in the gym. He had beaten UFC champions 3 out of 5 rounds, 4 out of 5 rounds, sometimes 5 out of 5 rounds in the gym. But then whenever the lights were on and the crowd was there and he's fighting a guy that's nowhere near who he's beating in the gym, he would almost be paralyzed with fear getting in there. And he would think and he would say out loud, he would voice saying, I've seen this guy's fights and yeah, I can beat him here, here, and here. But if he just gets this, he's going to win. And I was like, you can't be saying that backstage. You can't be saying that in the build up to the fight. I mean, it's good to know this guy can win in these areas, but if you're like giving yourself an out or giving him the opportunity in your mind to beat you before you ever get in there, you got to have that competitive edge where you believe in yourself.
Yeah. What's that like? Like, what's the mental picture in your own head?
Yeah. For me, and I don't want it to sound cocky or arrogant, but when I know I've put in the work, then I feel like I've earned the right to face him and to win if I've done all the right things.
I vibe that with music before. It's like if you rehearse, you feel like it's like you've been going to the gym in a sense. And you're like,
for sure.
It's like, well, I know I've been doing that.
Yeah.
And that it feels good. Like you feel like your muscles, like at least I feel like I can run the race.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
And if you haven't done all the right things, now all of a sudden doubt can creep in.
Yeah, but it's going to creep in. Yeah. So what do you? Is it about pushing it out, or is it more about allowing it in? And
I think it's more about focusing on the right things. I normally push it out, but my coaches have said, and I'm very grateful that they say that I might not be the strongest or the most talented, but I want it the most. And so mentally before the fight, like I'm confident. I know his strengths, and I've watched his strengths and his victories more times than he has, and more times his coaches have, more times than my own coaches have, trying to find his weaknesses. And I prepare for his strengths. But whenever I go in there, I'm like, I've earned this. I want it more than he does, and I have more reasons. As I've grown older and I've started to fight for the forgotten, I think it's the person with the most reasons that usually wins.
Really?
And yeah, you see in the Olympics, the guys that break the new world record, or whoever it is that breaks the world record, a lot of times it might be something that motivated them about family or country or legacy or the community that they came from. I came from the inner city, and I want the people in Ferguson, Missouri to know they can do this too. They can make it out, and that they can be a voice for their community. For me, when I win now, the last 3 fights or so, I've been able to donate, and I've been able to know that another well's going to be drilled in a community that I've done the water walks and seen them without. That's one thing that I would do to relate it to our well drilling teams. Every village that I've ever been to that we've drilled a water well, first thing we do whenever we unload everything, or before we unload our well drilling equipment and walk it in there, hike it in, I'm always like, let's go on the water walk with the women and children. And maybe the 7th or 8th one, we were all tired. It was a long journey. I remember my well drillers going, it's just going to be the same as last time. Our team, and they're like my heroes.
What's a water walk?
A water walk is, it's a good thing to explain. The average woman in Africa or child that either can't go to work or can't go to school or just has to do the daily duties. Normally it's a cultural thing that the men are doing a lot of manual labor in the fields, and so the wife might be taking care of the home, or they're both at work, and then they have to designate a child that can't go to school because now they got to do a 6-mile round trip walk to a water source that might be clean, but most likely not.
Right.
And it's 5 gallons of a jerry can, which is 20 liters, which is 44 pounds.
Yeah,
44
super
pounds.
heavy.
And for some of these children, or the women normally carry 2 at a time, because you need more than 5 gallons
88
to,
pounds?
yeah, you need more than 5 gallons whenever you're, and sometimes it might be a smaller, maybe they're carrying a 5-liter one and a 5-gallon one and a 2.5-gallon. But still, that's what, around
That's
66
crazy.
pounds or
Yeah.
something.
I mean,
And so we would go on these walks with them to their water source, and we would carry it back too. And we'd have them show us their water, like their dirty water they're drinking from, so that I would be, and our team would be reminded that this is their water now. So this is what we're fighting for, is clean water. And then on the tough days, whenever you want to quit or tap out, you're reminded of that walk. And like, it's going to be the same thing. I go, no, it's unique to this place. Like, the trail's different, the water's different. Like, is this one more stagnant? Is this the dirtiest source we've seen? Or do they have it, better where it's a spring box that they might be drinking from, which is like someone tried to filter a spring and it's okay, but they're still probably getting contaminants in there. And so I remember on the 13th or so water well, we spent more than 3 weeks drilling a well. I think it was closer to 4 weeks.
wow.
Yeah, manual drilling. We were real off the grid. And
Wow. That's hard. How deep are these wells?
60 to 80 feet in the rainforest is kind of the sweet spot, but you can get down to 150 feet with a hand pump. And then we use, like, we're hiking in single prong, triple prong, chisels, rock breakers. What else? Like, we have the casing pipes, we have the tripods, the chains, the ropes, bags of cement that are 100 pounds. We would load in, if we didn't have a wheelbarrow that actually would go on the trails and up and down these things, we would be hiking in bricks, or and it would be 30 minutes off the roadside, sometimes an hour. The most was 2 hours off, so 4 hours round trip just to our truck to get off of 1 ton of well drilling equipment. And we've got 20-foot long, 6-meter pipes that are either PVC or kind of that galvanized steel.
So these are manual wells?
A lot of them are.
So
we have multiple options, but when you can't drive in a truck because it's in the rainforest, you got to hike it in.
But for them, it's a pump.
Yeah.
So it's probably more mechanically sound as far as breakdowns.
For sure. And it's easily accessible to maintenance parts and upkeep. And it's not, I mean, solar is a pretty good option there. But in the rainforest, you got a canopy to deal with. And so when we can do a mechanized rig, man, we definitely drive in a truck and drill it. It's more expensive. And then you have to make sure that there's a system in place where they have a deep relationship or a way to communicate with the well drilling team, which is our guy like B-Tech, and he's transformed over 400 villages in Uganda, and he's got a whole team, and he's amazing. He's our Fight for the Forgotten team leader in Uganda.
So there's probably a lot of groundwater, I'd assume.
Yeah.
I mean, in my well in Utah, the power went out and the well stopped working. And that was just a couple weeks ago. And I was like, it was raining because that's why the power went out. So I was gathering rainwater. It just made me think, like, this is crazy. It's like, why isn't there at least on solar or something so the pump still works?
Yeah.
And there was no way to manually pump it. It's like, this is no good.
And see, a lot of people from our kind of Western mindset think it all needs to be mechanized, like the pumps and everything, because they're like, well, they have to pump it themselves. Well, they used to have to walk 6 miles, and now it takes them 2 minutes to fill up 5 gallons.
It's no problem. Yeah, you just won't have shower pressure, but you could if you pumped it into a tank and then gravity
a lot of times
fed.
we have
It's no big,
tanks that are
that's not that
gravity
big a
fed.
deal.
Yeah, and we'll have a little spigot that they can go fill up from. Now in Uganda, we have 32 homes that we're building. 15 are completed, maybe 20 by now. And we've got 3 wells out there. We're talking about setting up a rainwater collection too. But they have piped water in their homes now. Wow. And they haven't moved in yet. It's probably going to be more around first of the year. But we have 3 sustainable farms working out there. We're building a pharmacy and a clinic. And the thing about in Africa, I love a saying that they have. They will say to me, Efeosa is my name there. And
Efeosa?
Efeosa.
Efeosa.
Yeah. Efeosa means the man who loves us. And so I love that name. And then Mbuti MangBO is the Big Pygmy. So
Say that again.
Mbuti MangBO. And that
That's
means the
awesome.
Big Pygmy. And that's what all their neighbors and everyone there calls me. But they'll say, Efe, you Mzungus, which white guys, or you Westerners, you all have watches. But us Africans, we're the ones who have the time. And because they always see even me, they're thinking like, slow down, poly. I mean, slow down. You know, let's stop, let's eat, let's enjoy time with each other. So it's a good reminder to be here now, to be present. And I really appreciate that about them. But on that, I remember that well was so hard to drill in that like 13th village. And I snapped a picture over my shoulder. I'm sorry, this wasn't my 13th. This was our 35th well to complete because I'd come back home and gone back on a trip, and they had already done 2 weeks. And this is 2 weeks of my trip now at the beginning to get this well completed. We'd gotten in a collapsing zone. So basically what that means is if we drilled 60 feet deep, and at first you don't use casing pipes because you just have to pull that thing out of the earth after you're done. And it was just collapsing on the inside of it, and would go back up to like 2 feet deep after you get like 60 feet of the way there. You're using these augers and you're literally wrestling the earth. And I pummel, and I'd done Greco-Roman wrestling. This is the best workout you could do for that, at least on one side, and then you switch sides. But they were ready to quit. And when on the day that, because we had to pick up and move like a football field away, you know, or maybe 2 or 3, to try to get it in another spot. And they had already done that before I'd gotten there. So this is their 3rd time to pick up and move. Ooh. And then all of a sudden we started getting to a sweet spot where everything started to go easy. And when we finished that well in the celebration in that village, and it was one of the dirtiest water sources I've ever seen people drink from. I remember our well drillers, this is their 35th. It's my actual 14th to drill because I drilled the first 13, went back. And to see their joy, that's like a much deeper joy. For me, I've been to the Super Bowl, the World Series, NBA Finals, some of the biggest fights, packed arenas, and hear the cheers and the applause. And that's fun. It's a sporting event. But to hear the cheers of someone getting clean water for the first time, maybe a grandfather, like, or grandmother, seeing their grandkids
for the first time, period.
Water, first time ever, seeing water come out of a spout.
So for you, you're saying that when it's something larger than yourself, that helps actually motivate for more wins.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you think there's a connection to people who win more where it's more than just the me?
Yeah.
Maybe not, but it seems like this is you're saying.
Absolutely. I for sure, once I found purpose, I think in my first 12 fights, or 13 fights, I would get my hand raised and I would literally think, is this it? Is this all? And I'm not like even all the work. This is what all the work was for. Like, get my hand raised and the crowd's still going.
Yeah.
And already in my mind, I would think, like,
well, that's kind of a spiritual, revelation too. Yeah. It's sort of like any achievement. You're like, oh, it's not the thing. It's just sort of icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And a lot of us keep chasing it anyway.
I kept chasing it for at least 5 solid years, and then I crashed and burned into addiction.
Well, you think that's sort of actually like one of the reasons? It's sort of like addiction is it's like a different approach to try to find the meaning and the fulfillment.
Yeah, I that didn't fulfill me, so I found other things that would. And then really, I think it was purpose. It was like I was fighting against people, but really I was supposed to be fighing for people.
But you have been doing Fight for Forgotten for a bit.
Yeah, 10 years now.
And I mean, I don't know if this is too personal, but you said that like you still would struggle with like falling off the rails like that.
I'm living in a sober living home now.
Right.
And thanks for bringing that up, because purpose for 6 years kept me solid.
Right. So what happened, do you think?
I think it was, this isn't to point out blame on anyone because it's my stuff. But I was having like a failing marriage. And for me, I felt, and this is wrong logic because I got to just focus on me, but I couldn't help the person I wanted to help the most in a lot of ways, and she couldn't help the person she probably wanted to help in a lot of ways. And then I started feeling like once I relapsed, I started to try to hide it. I wouldn't, because now shame, guilt, condemnation, like I'm my own worst critic, and now I have all the reasons to live for, all the purpose, the organization. Now, if anyone finds out, I'm going to be cast out.
Right.
Because I wanted to get rid of me too at that time. I don't like who I am in addiction. And while that's healthy, I think I've come to a much healthier place lately, especially with me having a great woman to my side, like you do. She talked to me about one thing where I said, I need to attack what's been attacking me. I need to beat this out of me, and I think about it like training and stuff like that. And if I don't like it, got to change it. And I've got to be aggressive with it. And maybe that's that kind of warrior fighter spirit in me. But Amy goes, that's never worked for you. Stop. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, you got to love yourself. And if you don't love that side of you, and now my sponsor, who's my boxing coach, says, you got to love that you're an addict. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't have to work for it harder. You wouldn't have to make these changes. You wouldn't have to better yourself. You wouldn't have to be more careful. And you wouldn't be able to help people that are in the same thing. Like what I was telling you about Chris earlier. And so for Amy, she told me about a book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. I think his name's Kamal that wrote it.
I've heard of it.
And when she gave me the book, she said, read the title. And I said, love yourself like your life depends on it.
Done.
She goes, yeah. She goes, why? And I was like, and she goes, because it does. Mm-hmm. Because it does. And that's helped me a lot. I guess I'm a lover and a fighter because I really care about people. But I wouldn't give myself the same love, ever allow myself to give myself the same love or grace that I would give to other people. Like I would.
But that's crazy in some ways, because it's like that Dark Thoughts song, Loving Your Dark Thoughts. It's the same idea. It's like pushing things away is sort of the substrate of what it means to be human. Like it's sort of like we blow things up. That's our world right now. Like that's how engines run. That's how all of our energy is made. It's explosions.
Wow.
And so we're always pushing.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like step one. And like kind of as we start to like realize the larger sense of what it means to be human, it's about kind of bringing things in or like holding the experience. It's like a parent, like a loving parent. So your dark thoughts, in a sense, pushing them away versus like, oh, I'm just holding with that with love. And it's like loving the imperfection.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's the same realization you're having about your addiction.
I am. This last relapse, which was more than 4 months ago now, I think, it was a short one, but it was one that like, it went hard, it went fast. And it was weird because like the stints of them would go from like a 2-month period to a 1-month period to a 9-day period to like a 5-day period. But the intensity of those times was like the 5 days was almost worse than the 2 months or was.
Where were you?
I went back on a trip to Oklahoma.
Isn't that where it happened? I have a vague memory. There's a connection to Oklahoma. The first story he told.
I've had a couple there because I lived alone. And this one I went back and it was supposed to be a great trip and I had some great meetings set up. And then all of a sudden I dipped out on them. And when I came home to Amy, rightfully so, my stuff was packed and she's like, I just can't, she's got 2 girls. And I'd already set up a sober living home because I saw the intensity. I saw that I dropped off the map from her and my responsibilities and the people that I love. And so I'd already set up, going to a sober living home here. and really working on me and loving me, because I don't want to put Amy through a cycle of this. And honestly, I guess the good thing that happened is her and I have more of an open, honest, trusting relationship than we ever have had. We've always had an incredible amount of love for each other, but I think she can speak to me more honestly than ever before, and I can speak to her more honestly than before. And we both really appreciate that.
The fire burns away the underbrush, but the big trees, the old growth still remains. It's like, you can see clearer in a way, and the strength didn't change those trees.
Yeah.
But it's like all that stuff that was like the brush.
Yeah.
Burns it out.
I like that.
Yeah. So it really, it does a service in a way to clearly yourself on your own path, but like how it helps the two of you grow. And if you're stepping into like deeper forms of your relationship, I think you said this the other day, it's like you're glad that happened when it did, because it's an illuminator. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, because I mean, I can say that Amy told me she was grateful that this happened, and that sounds good, especially if I'm on a podcast. But whenever I get to come to that point and say I'm grateful for it too, because now we have this depth that we wouldn't have had if we didn't go through the hard times, and if she didn't point out some of the things like, you're not loving yourself here. And now, because of it, like, I'm loving myself through this trial or addiction, or trying to invite it in. Like, you used to try to cut that part of me off and say, I've just got to disconnect from that. Now I got to connect to it and see, like, I try to fill void sometimes with numbing or escaping, or and what's so crazy, man, for me, mine would say, I'm just going to take a night off. Just a night off. Have no plan whatsoever for it to go 5 days or 2 months. But in the wrestling world, there's a thing called a reset weekend.
You told me about this. Basically, how hard and fast and far can you go? Yeah.
In a very short amount of time, and then get right back on the horse.
Reset.
Reset.
Reset to what? Yes.
So anyways, other people could do that, I guess, and I just never could. And so there was something in me that was like, and AA and stuff, which works for a lot of people and doesn't for others. But they would say, my brain's trying to kill me and make it look like my brain's trying to trick me and kill me and make it look like an accident. And there's times that I could absolutely see that I was like living in delusion of, almost this mental obsession that there'll be a time I can use like other people, use like a gentleman, and just, pick it up and put it down. And, but I think loving that side of me that's like imperfect has started to help me help others in a greater way. Amy reminded me yesterday that Jim, my executive director of Fight for the Forgotten, who's like a second father to me, he said he's like when he's sober and he's loving the people around him, he's great. But now that he's loving himself so that he can love the people around him even more, he said it was like an unstoppable force of good. Like, that was his words. And I'm very grateful to hear that. But I'm like, damn, that's what I want to be.
Well, I think, but you are. And I think the recognition is that it's not that you become this person who loves themselves. It's like you already do love yourself. It's more recognition that you can love yourself, and you could hate some of those aspects of that bender, in a sense, or relapse. And it's more like, no, I'm not erasing the fact that I find that repulsive. I'm loving even the feeling of repulsion. Yeah. It's like I'm allowing that to be in there too, as opposed to pushing it away. And I mean, to me, that seems like that's kind of next level, because it's always those feelings are gonna exist.
Yeah.
And it's more saying like, you're here too. I'm not saying you have to be excommunicated, but it's just like, that's not the whole truth. That's not all you're inside this space of love. That's the truth. And that's just something, that's a piece, little thing in there. It's a color that you paint with, but it's not everything, And trying to say it's gone forever, it's
Yeah.
never going to happen. Not that the relapsing part, I'm just saying, mean like the feelings that are the
Yeah.
seeds of that.
I've started to learn that there isn't any feeling that's final, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Everything moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as I'd want all the love to be final and it's there at all times or top of mind at the forefront, I know that's always there, but those feelings, at least that I was meaning and pointing out, like the feelings of depression, the feelings or even a craving, like those things aren't final. They're not always there. And if I can just weather those, and not even weather, embrace those, welcome them, allow them, remember that, hey, I've overcome this before. I'm going to overcome it again.
It's kind of a top level view, bird's eye view.
Yeah.
It's kind of watch, as Ram Dass would say, like watching the show go by. It's sort of like you see it happening. It's okay, well, this scene's going to end. You know, I can like let that, as opposed to like, I know in my mind sometimes that I'll attach onto it and then I'm giving it more fuel.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like the whole show. And then I'm like inside it, as opposed to like, no, that's going to pass.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Chris. There's this gentleman that has come close to our nonprofit now. And so it's pretty amazing. I did the Joe Rogan podcast January 27th. That was my last time on there. And this guy, Chris, messaged me right after it. Well, it was 9:58 p.m. on January 27th, the release, the same day as the release. And then right before, I was actually in this ice bath you're about to get in. And
yeah, we'll do that in a few minutes.
I did a IG live, and I got a comment, a bunch of comments that said, go read this comment. And I finally went up and read it. And Chris had put on there that I was walking on January 27th, I was walking to the Brooklyn Bridge to jump off. I got a notification on my phone, and it was your new podcast with Joe. Because I decided to listen to like get rid of the noise. And thank you for being so open and sharing your story of your suicide attempt, because I decided not to jump. It saved my life. I was like, whoa.
Whoa.
Then I was up and on it a month later, and this guy, I was working out with 60 dudes. I started walking out, and I heard footsteps running up on me. I stop, I turn, and I get a surprise hug. That's the sweatiest surprise hug I was ever given, longest. Call it the Austin style hug, but it was this guy from New York, and all I hear was, I'm the guy. I said, hey buddy, you gotta help me out. What's that mean?
Yeah, I've been mugged where someone came from behind and be like, I don't know how I'd feel initially.
Yeah. I turned around and he front hugged me. But anyways, I go, you're the guy. But what's that mean? He said the Brooklyn Bridge. And I looked in his eyes and he had tears welling up. And I just pulled him back in and gave him an even longer hug. And I was like, wow, bro. We took a picture together. And the next day I went to a drug treatment center, a 90-day inpatient rehab. And I shared my story, and I'm there with my boxing coach, my sponsor, and a sparring partner who's also in recovery that I spar with every Sunday. And during the Q&A, they said that they learned about one guy says, we learned about vulnerability yesterday, and today we learned about synchronicity. He goes, yesterday I got vulnerable and said I want to be an MMA fighter. And today, so the synchronicity is you guys are sitting here. And he said that, and I go, well, wow, let me tell you about my yesterday. And I told him about Chris's story. Well, 30 minutes before I got in there for the treatment center, I sent Chris the photo we took together. He asked me to take one on my phone. It was a little better of a phone or camera. So I did, and I sent it to him. He goes, man, I love that we took that picture together. Thank you. He goes, don't think I'm crazy. I'm covering my teeth because I lost 9 teeth when I got hit in the mouth with a baseball bat in Harlem.
Ooh.
I was like, whoa.
Oh, God.
And I go, you got to tell me a little more about this. He said he was homeless in Harlem. COVID happened. It hit New York real hard. He used to work on Wall Street. Used to work on Wall Street, had a bad breakup, relapsed, COVID, shut down. He ended up, couldn't pay rent, and he was homeless in Harlem.
Brave soul.
And I just got to go on the walk with him, and we went to New York, and he showed me the spot in the 125th Street, like in Harlem. The spot, 7 guys jumped the turntables, whatever you call them. Not turntables. Turnstile. There you go.
Yeah.
Turntables, what you do.
2 turntable, yeah. 2 turnstiles.
Yeah, 2 turnstiles.
Microphone.
And so they jumped that. They had a baseball bat. They took his money. He said, I gave you my money. Please don't hurt me. And one of the guys said, wrong place, wrong time, wrong color. And hit him 3 or 4 times in the face with a bat. He was in ICU for like 3 to 5 days. Actually lost 9 teeth and a bunch of others were damaged.
Whoa.
So he told me that. And I shared at the treatment center that he was worried about his smile. But, a smile's small potatoes. He's got breath in his lungs. He's got a beating heart in his chest. The videographer that was there for the treatment center, all of a sudden I go to my car after meeting the guys, shaking hands, and I hear footsteps running up on me again. And I turn around, he puts his hand on my shoulder and he's breathing heavy. He's like, I gotta tell you about my yesterday. And I said, sure, what's going on? He goes, I was hired yesterday by a man starting a charity for guys in recovery that need new smiles. He's a dentist. He's Austin's best dentist. He started flipping through pictures of him on the magazine of like Austin's best dentist. And he pulled up the Google reviews. The guy's got like 1,500 5-star reviews. I'm like, wow. He goes, can I call him? Can I tell him about Chris? I'm like, yes, absolutely. So we were able to get him a minimum of a $60,000 brand new smile. He spent 20 hours in the chair.
Whoa.
We went to the workout on Thursday, this men's workout at On It. And this time we're at Zilker Park. I brought the dentist with me, who's like an Ironman, like 3rd place in the nation or something crazy, or at least some big national one. And I have Dr. Dave Frank at a Walden Dental here in Austin holding Chris's feet during the workout. They're doing push-ups. He doesn't even know he's about to get a new smile. And at the end, we all circled up. I spoke. I had Chris share a little bit vulnerably. And then show the community that like we have this support system around us. There's like 60 dudes minimum that meet up every Thursday, work out together. And then we had Dr. Frank step up and he surprised Chris, and we're going to the dentist's office right now.
Right now
we're going.
I saw the picture and it was incredible.
It's an incredible transformation. He had 2 front teeth and 3 bottom teeth.
He must be over the moon.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday there was a girl at On It that I was able to wingman with them, and like they might go on a date here soon.
Wow.
And, they were at least going to go on a hike, and Amy called him handsome. Amy and her daughter Sydney was there, 16 years old, and they were crying when they saw the transformation.
What a journey.
Yeah.
I mean, you have such a big heart, man. It's insane. It's like, and I love that you're turning it a little bit more onto yourself too, because it's like you're a giver in such a way. It's like, it just blows me away, your ability to like bring in community and make things happen that you can't do alone. You know,
sure.
And I always think in my head, like, well, what can I do? Or, I can't do that. I mean, literally, like, I can't do that thing I'm thinking about, but I never think about organizing larger groups.
Yeah.
Like, how do I connect to the person who can, or even just it's like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'll just say, I want to be a part of helping make that happen.
Yeah. What's funny is before Chris ever got his teeth, I went to his new smile. I call him Miracle Smile Chris now. And I went to a sober living home. He moved here. The day we hugged, he was 1 month sober. And I was like 2.5 or 3 months sober. And I went there and we're hanging out, and he had told me how he moved here and he said I was a hero of his. That's the word he used. I was like, man, kick me off whatever pedestal you got me on, because guess what? I'm in your sober living home, but you don't know I'm in a sober living home right now. And he's like, what? And I go, yeah, man, I'm just like you. And we got to love ourselves. And I gave him the book. And anyways, I told him beforehand, I go, you know what I feel like we're going to do one day? He goes, what? He goes, this is just so surreal. You're in my home and you brought me food. And I was like, well, I just can't wait till we're up in New York sometime and we're walking the Brooklyn Bridge and we're rewriting your story and rewriting my story. And we both have those similarities, and it's going to be healing for me, brother. Like, I got to tell him that during the Joe Rogan podcast, I had like this devil on my shoulder or whatever, insecurities that was saying, stop sharing, don't share.
That's a very vulnerable one.
Yeah.
The last one, yeah.
Yeah. It was hard. It wasn't perfect before we got in there. That someone brought in like kind of COVID and exposed us, and Joe's like sending his wife to go take this guy care
Oh
package,
God.
and there were just like some distractions. We got started 2 hours late, even though we were both there early. And I'd gone there a month before saying, I'm going to share this. And I told Joe, I got a story I've never shared before, and I want to do it because I think it's going to help some people. And then when we're in it, I was like beating around the bush and I wasn't doing it. And I was like, abort mission, stop, pump the brakes. You're going to look weak. People are going to not donate. Joe's a friend. He's a donor. Other donors are going to learn and say they want their money back, or, just all these things. And a thought in my mind or soul came forward and was like, if it just helps one person, it's worth it. So at Chris's house, I got to tell him, bro, you're my one person.
Yeah, that's a great North Star.
Yeah.
I use that too sometimes, like, because it's true.
Yeah.
If you find that connection, it's enough, more than enough.
Yeah. So whenever we're on the bridge, this last time we went and saw where he was in the ICU. We went to the subway station. We drove down the walk because he walked 101 blocks to the Brooklyn Bridge that day. And then we got out and we walked the bridge, and we got to the spot where there's these wooden planks, and then there's this metal beam that takes you over to where the water is, and you're above all the cars. And he showed me that spot, and his palms were sweating. He was nauseous. He was dizzy. His legs were shaky.
Yeah.
And he goes, this is just heavy. It's really heavy. I mean, take your time, But we were there, and then a guy walked up on us named Corbin, who used to be workout partners, or had trained a little bit with this Jocko, if you ever heard of him. And so like the Navy SEAL guy.
Yeah.
And he stops me while the cameras are on us, which was great. I mean, he waited to the side for a little bit. And he goes, hey guys, I got to go. My friend's already ahead. But I just wanted to step in and say, your last Joe Rogan podcast impacted me deeply when I was going through addiction and I was thinking about suicide. And I was like, what? And Chris is like, that's my story. And I go, that's my story. And
it's the vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, that was a very, very vulnerable podcast. Yeah. And I think people, especially when they see someone like you that's a fighter, and you're sharing such vulnerable things and feeling like in that voice in your head that says, I'm going to look weak. And it's like, yeah, it is a feeling you're going to have. And that's beautiful. You're like, I'm going to still share this story. And like, we're all human beings. Like, we all are scared about feeling weak and feeling overwhelmed and falling off the edges of things, jumping off our bridge is, if not a literal bridge. And so I thank you for sharing those stories. Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, thank you for that. The part I was most excited about was a moment came where Chris said, I can't believe this, that we're here, that Corbin just stopped us and told us his story, and that I was listening to you 9 months ago, and his ears are still red from where he has earbuds and he listens to podcasts so much. He's got like red insides of his ears. He goes, I was listening to this podcast and now you're on here with me. I go, stop. Say, I can believe it. Like, and Amy gave me that reframe and was like, no, stop saying you can't believe it. Say,
I accept the gifts.
Accept the gifts. I love that.
Yeah.
And I go, bro, say I can believe it. Because he said he felt like 100-pound bag of bricks fell off his shoulders.
Yeah.
And that he's never felt lighter in his life. Still on the bridge. And I go, bro, this is what healing feels like. This is what it looks like, brother. Like we came back here because we don't want to have this. We want to replace this. It's a pattern interrupt. Instead of thinking the Brooklyn Bridge is terrible and you hate it, now you can say it's part of my story and I love it.
Rewrite the trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a phrase that I mantra for myself. That's I accept the love holding me. And it's the same idea. It's like accepting sort of what is, as opposed to being afraid of all the things that maybe aren't, that are just in your head. And sort of like, that's the gift.
Maybe a last word or something for me is for the listener. If they're in a dark place, invite that love in, the love holding you, accept that love that's holding you, but also give yourself the gift in this man's chaotic times meditation. I had a friend in January 1st was his, January 2nd was his funeral. He passed. He actually died by suicide.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
Left 4 sons behind, 12, 14, 18, 21, and his wife, Gina. And we played Chaotic Times for him.
Meditation for Chaotic Times.
Meditation
the
for
meditation,
Chaotic Times.
Yeah.
Meditation for Chaotic Times, that's how you say it.
Just if people want to find it.
Yeah, for sure. Meditation for Chaotic Times, a guided meditation from you. And it's been so beautiful. I've played that for Chris.
Oh, cool.
I've played that for them. I've played it for Amy. I've played it for me. And that thing has been a real gift. I think you mentioned something similar to accepting the love that holds us.
Yeah, and that's beautiful because that was really just me talking to myself at the first week of the pandemic, like literally just grabbing a mic and doing a meditation for myself, and then not thinking twice about it, put it out within a week or something, which is extremely fast for. Yeah. I just had it mastered and put it out. Yeah. And as I'd never put out a meditation on Spotify, I was like, I don't even know if they're going to kick this off, But it's great to hear because there's something universal. The solace that I'm needing here is the same solace we all need to hear as human beings. And so it's a great reminder, all the infinite flavors and colors that comes in. Yeah. We can give it to each other in all these different ways, like your story on that podcast, to a meditation like this, to just even the way you look at someone, you might think it's nothing, but it's the same substrate of energy that is the gift they need, because it's echoing that. It's another reflection of that same gift. Yeah. And we can do it in all these ways. And you were thinking you were weak in that moment, but it's saving a life, you know?
Magic's happened.
Exactly.
Miracle, we got to seal the deal on the miracle on the Brooklyn Bridge. Same place he's going to jump off now. He's jumping into a new life with a new smile, new hope. It's been great, man. And I think that Chris is even starting to help me. He listens to podcasts all the time. He says he's listened to every single one of the Joe Rogan episodes. Every one.
That's like a certain club. Yeah, it's hiking all the peaks in Colorado or something.
You're right. So he started sending me some of his favorite timestamps for clips on my show.
Wow.
Overcome with Just Wren. I go, dude, you can start doing this for me, because I need to get some of those clips, because I've been getting one maybe, and we're going to start getting him access to the podcast early, and he's going to start helping my show.
That's awesome.
So I'm pumped.
Thank you, man. Yeah. This has been fun. So is this going to be some revelatory experience where we get in this ice bath and
we'll turn on a meditation for Chaotic Times?
I'm not going to last the full 15 minutes. There's no way.
It's true. We'll get to the I am strength. I am fortitude. And no, I think it's going to be great for you, man. It's not going to last that long, and it'll be bone-chilling cold afterwards for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you'll get this lightness. Well, I brought 3 guys from my sober living home here, and we put them in the ice for 3 minutes each. So they did it. You can do it too. But anyways, they left in the same car, and they made me either a video or sent me one of those voice texts that disappears. And they were laughing and giggling like, I don't know, high school girls or something, where it was just so fun to hear that uplifting spirit from one of the guys in the car that I hadn't heard that kind of laughter from.
Well, I hope I turn into a giggling schoolgirl.
There you go.
That's my goal.
Rada's going to like that.
All right, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.